What's up guys, it's Coach Lindsey here at Lionston with Tristan, owner and head coach here. As some of you may or may not know, I am training for my first marathon this year. Previously, so this past fall in October, I ran my very first half marathon. And throughout that process, I realized how important proper warm-up and proper cool-down really are throughout this process. I had a little bit, I wouldn't say I had an injury during my training, but I definitely experienced a lot of pain on my left leg, my hip area, quad, and so I thought this would be a really awesome video to help you guys prevent injury or pain throughout your running training, whether it's a 5K all the way up to a marathon. So Tristan, if you don't know, how many marathons have you run over your lifetime?
24.
24? Awesome. So he is definitely qualified to help us here, and you guys are definitely going to learn a lot. So yeah, let's go ahead and
talk warm up and talk cool down.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So for warm up for running, I think it's really important that people think about more of a dynamic warm up. I know I have been guilty of the opposite for many, many years in my early years of running. And I know a lot of fellow runners that just kind of use the first mile as their warm up. So it's like they get out of, they drive somewhere to run, or maybe they're running from home, and they get outside and they get the watch going, take a breath, and they take off. That is not a warm up. That's not at all a warm up, and your first mile easy shouldn't act as a warm up. There needs to be, I think, more of a system and more of a process to preparing ourselves for a run. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't need to be complicated. It can be super, super simple. I think one of the easiest ways, and anybody that's ever run with me knows, one thing that I do all the time, pre-run and post-run for the last 5 or 6 years now, is a bunch of squats. I think squats are a great way to prime the system, get hips opened up, get the ankles opened up, get some blood flow going, get the tissues going a little bit. And they just are a great way to both kind of pre-run, kind of prime the system and get it ready to go, and post-run kind of normalize that tissue function again. One of the things that I talk to people about all the time is the fact that running is a highly repetitive movement in a very restricted range of motion. And so it offers us a ton of benefits from a health standpoint, but it also tends to wind us up. Gets a lot of runners are really, really stiff, really, really tight. I think one way to start trying to mitigate that stiffness creeping up is making sure that you're moving through full ranges of motion, both pre-run and especially post-run. Obviously hydration, nutrition, etc. Those things are all hugely valuable. What you're doing outside running is part of this process as well. But it's easy to put some low-hanging fruit there that would be pre-run, hit some squats, post-run, hit some squats. Do a little bit more beyond that would be leg swings. Leg swings are just kind of a no-brainer. So generally for a dynamic warm-up, what I would do is leg swings. I'll go some squats. I'll go some heel to toes. So just rocking back, getting those, loading up the tendons, loading up the Achilles a little bit, getting the calves going. Again, breaking up some stiffness that might be present from my run the day before in my calf and my Achilles and my ankle joint as a whole. And then just some single leg, single leg. It can be something as easy again as a reverse lunge, maybe just a, almost like a single leg deadlift or hip hinge, get that hamstring going a little bit, create a little bit of a balance stimulus prior to running. And this can all be done in 2 minutes,
Yeah.
It can happen super fast.
And I think one reason I didn't warm up previously in my training was I was like, I don't have time, or I don't want to spend the extra time. And really, like you said, it just takes 2 minutes. And whether you're starting from a very beginner level running, or you are like me and you're a trainer and you're very active and you've played sports your whole life, these things are very important. And I know for me, I was kind of in that mindset of, I'll be fine, I don't need to spend that extra time. And it really does add up, and it really does affect your training. And so yeah. And I think and I think especially as you incorporate a dynamic warm up in there, and the cool down as well, but the dynamic warm up, it really does, you feel better in that first mile than you would otherwise, right? I think a lot of people like you said, I don't have time. Even if you're sacrificing a half mile or a quarter mile or a half mile at the end of your run to make time for that warm up,
I think that's going to serve you better in the long run than squeezing in that extra quarter mile or half mile. So if you're time crunched, and you've got time for 5 miles, maybe make it 4.5 and get a proper warm up in. And like I said, hit a quick cool down as well. And one thing that I always think is important too, and what I talk to people about is that warm up and cool down should look relatively similar. Like they don't. Again, it's about executing some shapes and some fuller ranges of motion, and those two things are the same whether it's warm up or cool down. And now obviously there's some things that we can do in cool down around opening up hips and some soft tissue work that we can do that's taking it one step further. But again, if it's a 2-minute quick dynamic warm up, you could just do the exact same thing after your run and you're going to feel better for it. And then maybe later when you get home that night, you can hit some soft tissue work and some mobilizations and things like that.
Okay, cool. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna demo some of these exercises that you can throw in at the beginning of your next run. Again, we're not spending a ton of time, but we'll just kind of break each of these movements down for you so that you feel comfortable adding them into your next warm up. So you mentioned squats were kind of the first thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
So just a basic bodyweight squat here, guys. And one thing that we want to think about with bodyweight squats is just good fundamentals around these. Feet are going to stay straight. Knees are going to go out. That's going to generate external rotation through the hips. In turn, that's going to activate that hip complex more effectively. And we want those hips engaged and active and turned on and awake prior to our run. So that's a great way to kind of really think about what am I trying to do here? Well, I want to get the musculature awake, and a good quality body weight squat, feet straight, knees out is our simple way of thinking about it. Squeeze your butt up at the top. Let's try to evenly distribute weight along the bottom of the foot so we're not all the way back on the heels, we're not up on the toes. We're just going to try to find that nice midfoot, good position here, sit down into that squat, back up and repeat. If we're going to go then into a little bit of single leg work, like I said, it can just be a reverse lunge, and you can make this maybe a little more stimulating from a balance standpoint by alternating every other one. Heel to toes. One thing I like to do with heel to toes is I start with toes in, rock back and up, and I slowly kind of work my way out all the way around here. So eventually by the end, my toes are going to be facing out. And I feel like this is a great way just to kind of, like I said, address some of that stiffness that can start forming around the joint itself. And it just creates some different angles of load on the tendon a little bit as well. So I think there's some benefit there, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You could just go some basic heel to toes. You could do some basic heel walks and then toe walks. The idea, like I said, is that we want to get the ankle warmed up and get those tissues going. And then last could just be get the hamstrings going. Again, go back to a single leg here. We're gonna hinge back. We're gonna hinge back onto a single leg. Feel for a little bit of hamstring tension. We're gonna preserve that spine so that we can actually load up some tension in that hamstring. Just come down, you can kind of tap your knee, tap your shin. If you got better range of motion than I do, maybe get your hand all the way down to the ground. And we're just gonna go back and forth there. Again, just kind of get the hamstring woke up and get the hip going and stimulate a little bit of balance awareness as well.
Perfect. So how many squats, how many lunges?
I think just basic. I think again, you can put some. I think just start with 10s, honestly, on all of it. Yeah, 10 squats. One round through. Hit some leg swings first, and open up the hips, and then we'll go into 10 bodyweight squats, and maybe then go into go to the heel to toes, then go to reverse lunge, and then go to the single leg hip hinge. And you can run through 10 on all that and be good to go. If you got a little more time, maybe run through 2 rounds or run through rounds of 20. I think it's kind of dependent on just where you're at from the conditioning and fitness level. I think the stronger you are, obviously, somebody like you who does a lot of strength training, a lot of lifting, you could run through rounds at probably 25 and be fine. So I think that's more independent on the individual.
All right, cool. Now let's talk about cool down.
Yeah. So cool down, like I said, could be just the exact same thing. So again, if we're in a time crunch, just run through the same process that you just ran through for dynamic and just maybe spend a little bit more time in it, right? So in a warm up, maybe we're hitting our air squats with a little more speed, kind of getting the nervous system going, incorporating that breath work. Cool down, maybe we're just spending some time in the bottom of that position, opening up those hips, kind of feeling forward a little bit, kind of hitting some different corners here. Maybe we can go into a lateral lunge or a Cossack squat and really kind of open up those hips. Think, like I said, we've just done a lot of repetitive movement in the same range of motion, or a lot of highly repetitive movement in a restricted range of motion. And that restricted range of motion is really just a little bit of hip flexion and a little bit of hip extension and a lot of numbers of load, right? A ton of repetitions have just been repeated. So we want to open up everything kind of in a way that is unwinding some of that tension. So a great way to do that is a lateral lunge. So that's another one of my favorites. You could do that too pre-run as well. So that's a great one. And just spend some time in those positions. Open up the body into full range. And then if we're gonna do, we can get down on the ground here. And another great one to just open up the hips is what we call the 90-90 with a 3-point hinge here. So we're gonna preserve that spine. We're gonna gently rotate, hinge over to the knee here. And then we're gonna come back. We're gonna gently rotate kind of right over mid-shin with an inhale. And then we'll exhale. And then we'll gently hinge over the foot. If you're stiff like me, you don't go very far, and that's okay. And then we can kind of progress this too. So we can do what we call a reach here. So we reach in all 3 of those points. We can go to no hands and repeat. And then we can bias up a little bit of internal rotation on the back leg, pull that foot up off the ground, and maybe repeat the reach, or no hands, or whatever your range of motion kind of allows you to do there. Another good one, the last one that we could do too would be bottom of the lunge position, or just kind of classic lunge position here. We'll squeeze the glute. Back foot we're going to have active, perfect. So that way we're going to create just a little more tension on the anterior chain. We're going to squeeze the glutes. We're going to keep the rib cage down here. We'll take a deep breath in, and with that glute squeeze, we're going to gently kind of lean forward here, and we should feel just a nice stretch and pull through that TFL and maybe into the rec fem a little bit, depending on how stiff the quads are. And we'll come here and kind of hang out, kind of get into that end range while maintaining that glute squeeze. Relax with an exhale and come back. And we can repeat that, and we can kind of touch on some different corners here too. So we can kind of maybe open up here, get into the adductors a little bit, just kind of feel for some hot spots, and kind of see where you might be a little stiff and a little tight from that run.
Like it.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, my warm up and cool down is definitely going to look a lot different for my marathon training this year.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thank you, Tristan.
Yes,
That was awesome.
absolutely.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.